Now, I will recap what has happened in chapter 7 here. Upon the returning from the tour, Victor receives a letter from his father saying that his youngest brother, William, has been murdered. Very shocked and upset, Victor and Clerval rushes to Geneva, but the town gate is closed when they arrive. Victor visits the spot where his brother had died. On the way, he sees lightning playing over the peaks of Mountain Mont Blanc. You could see that as family bliss and the innocence of the perfect, picture-perfect family that Victor has been described to have, Victor's description of nature turned dark, reflecting what is his personality right now. Lightning is being placed as a reminder that of his earlier realization that mankind can never understand nature. It's a lesson that he forgot. It's a lesson that should never be forgotten. But for Frankenstein here, you can see that he has been said to, quote unquote, cheat nature and create a creature that is not according to its laws, thing that it has a thing that is his milestone to trying to defeat it, to defeat nature. And the consequences seen in chapter 7 is the cost of his arrogant assault on nature. You can see that in the book, near where his brother had died, Victor sees a figure resembling a monster. He realizes that the monster killed William, which means that Victor, is really responsible since he created the monster. Victor ultimately realizes the consequences and begins to lose what is his innocence. And he realizes the monster is revenging itself onto him. He said that a flash of lightning illuminated the object and discovered its shape plainly to me, its gigantic stature, the deformity of its aspects more hideous than belongs to human, instantly informed me that it was the wretch, the filthy demon whom I had given life. This carries on with the theme of prejudice, with the theme of the fact that people who are not considered beautiful is considered as evil, as something that is wretched. It's not something that is beautiful. You can see a lot that revenge is now a very, very different, it's now a very prominent theme within the book itself. When Victor arrives home the next day, his brother Ernest tearfully informs him that Justine has been accused of William's murder, because in her pocket, the police had found a portrait of Victor's mother that William had been wearing. Victor, who thought of himself as the creator of life, will now be responsible for the death of two innocents, two people who have nothing to do with the monster. Victor had said to his family that Justine is certainly not guilty, but says no more since he is afraid that anyone hearing his story would think of him as insane. But Victor is confident that Justine could not be convicted for a crime she did not commit by circumstantial evidence. Here, circumstantial evidence is basically the fact that Justine has the locket that William is wearing. In crime itself, circumstantial evidence is not that common for someone to be prosecuted into such a crime like murder. So he was quite confident that circumstantial evidence alone could not define who has murdered who. However, there are a lot of cases where circumstantial evidence does make the cut and say that that person was responsible for that person's death. So reeling back with the story, by concealing his role in William's death and what is Justine's death, Victor isolates himself and needs to bear and has to bear all the consequences of his fate alone. One of the active themes that you see here that plays out in every single chapter is family, society, and isolation. Victor has already isolated himself in chapters 4, 5, 6 by trying to create the monster, but now he has isolated himself further after he have discovered what the monster has done and what he needs to do to prevent the murder what he has reaped by the murders of William and Justine. So now I want to ask you, why do you think that is? Why do you think that? Why do you think that the author might include the details about the gates around town being locked and with Victor being shut out? Why do you think that the author would add the add the detail about Victor being shut out? Um, Mary,
Yes.
can you answer my question? You were raising your hand, right?
Uh-uh.
Anyways, I'll repeat the question here. Mm, Why do you think that the author might include the detail about the gates around town being closed, with Victor being shut out? Why do you think that is? Come on.
I don't have any back anymore.
What? Can you say that again? Ivan, can you? Okay, 1 second. Ivan, can you say that again? I didn't catch it. Sarah, can you answer the question?
Maybe because they're scared that the monster is still roaming and it might attack other people.
The thing is that the people don't actually know about the monster, so that might not be it. But
Okay.
interesting proposition. Uh, that's an interesting view. Lily,
I think the author include that detail because it gives you a sense like the night like it was kind of spooky so you can imagine it clearer.
okay. That's almost correct. You're almost there. But basically, the locked gate basically would symbolize Victor's isolation and exclusion from society, from peace, from redemption. Physically being shut out is mirroring his emotional and psychological alienation, him being shut out from the world, from society, from his own family. It also, like you said, reinforces the atmosphere and Victor's sense of being trapped in the consequences of his own action. Um, okay, now one more question. What does what does Victor assume about the monsters like motivation for murder? Why did like for example what has Frankenstein thought about be about the monster murdering his brother? Like, why was that? Someone else? Lily?
Because I think the monster was really creepy and the creature looked just like the monster that the other had seen. And so he think that yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, basically that's it. He thinks that the monster has killed his brother because of his stature, of the way, of course, Victor has built the monster himself, collecting parts from the slaughterhouse from different graves, and he will soon be acquainted with all of its features, right? So as of the course that he worked over months from this monster, he would eventually recognize that stature anywhere. And that is the reason why he thinks that the monster was the one that killed his brother. Okay, chapter 8. Uh, Mary, can you read chapter 8?
We passed a few side hours until the trial was begun. My father and the rest of the family had to attend as witness, so I accompanied them to the court. The trial itself was like truth. I blame myself for the death of William. I fear I would be the responsible conviction and death of Justin. I longed to confess myself guilty of crime, but I was absent when I was committed, and such a confession would have been considered a raving of a madman. Tristan seemed calm. She dressed in mourning, and her face was enraged and ran by the most serious of her feelings.
Continue.
And her face was engaged and ran by seriousness of her feeling. The most beautiful, although many were staring at her hostile eye, she did not tremble. She went and entered the court. She scanned the room and quickly discovered where he was sitting. A tear seemed to dim her eyes when she started because she quickly recovered herself and looked sorrowful. Affection seemed to serve a clear evidence of her early illness. The trial against her was reading out. The several witnesses were called. Several strange facts find against her. She was uh, out. She was out all night in the night where the murders had been committed. Murderer had been committed. In that addition, at morning drew near, she was spotted by the mounted woman not so far from the spot where the body of murderer children had been found. The woman asked her what she was doing. Rogerson looked very odd and gave a confusing, unintelligible answer. She returned to the house about 8 o'clock asked where when asked where she had passed the night. She replied she had been looking out for a child and asked if anything had hurt concerned him. When showed the body, she fell into a violent hysteric and remained in bed for several days. The picture was produced once in the servants found in her pocket. Elizabeth justified with a secret that was the same one that she had placed around William's neck and hour before he went missing. When a spectator heard this murder horror in dictionary protocol. Next, Justin was called to testify. As the trial has proceeded, her appealing and utter a surprise of horror in the misery was strong expression. Some she struggled with her. Can you go down?
Yeah.
With her power and spoke in the audible through a various voice. God knows, she said, how entirely I am innocent, but I must prove it to the court. I I rest my innocence on a plain, simple explanation, on fact evidence at the evidence against me. I hope my character I have always borne in clients judged to a favorable in in passion, in penetration, where a circumstance of appearance down on suspicion and she justified her action on the night of the murder, which would Elizabeth Bassett. She has passed the evening in the house of her aunt in Chong, a village, a village about 3 miles from Geneva. On her return at about 9 o'clock, she met a man who asked if she had seen anything of a child who was lost. She was concerned by this account and passed several hours in looking for him. Then the gate of Geneva was shut, and she was forced to spend hours in the barn. She slept for a few minutes shortly before dawn, when then a person discovered she awoke. It was dawn. She left the barn, and so that night began searching for my brother again. If she was found near the spot his body lay, without her knowledge that she had been confused and questioned by the market woman, he was not surprised since she had passed a sleepless night and afraid of poor Willie, still uncertain. A concerned picture she could give no account. I know, Tristan continued, how heavy this detail weighs against me, but I'm unavailable. Just to the explain, I cannot say who might have placed it in my pocket or why. I believe that I have no enemies on earth. I have not so would have so been so wicked to as to wish to destroy me. I did I did I did the murdering place is go down murdering place there is there. I don't know how to I don't or how know how or when he might done it, nor I understand why he was the one who stolen it. It will be willing to part with again soon. I committed the cause to my church, yet I see no room for hope. I beg permission to have a few witness exam concerning my character. If they test the night is not enough, I understand I must be found guilty, although I swear before God I'm innocent. Several witnesses was called. I all had known for Tristan for many years and spoke well of her, but they seemed cautious, fighting fear and hatred of a crime, which makes suppose her guilt and make them hesitate. Elizabeth said that justice was in trouble. She asked for permission to address the court. I am, she said, the cousin of an unhappy child who was murdered, or rather his sister, for I educated by life with his parents. Since before he was born, it was made, therefore he judged it improper for me to come forward on this occasion, but I wish to speak. I wish I wish to say what I wish to say what I know of the accused and her character. I have lived in the same house in her for many years. During those years, she had appeared to me the unbeloved of a human creature. She is more unable to develop human creature. She nursed my aunt in her last illness with the great affection and care. She attended to her own mother during a long illness. After her mother died, she lived in my uncle's house where she had been loved by our family. She was warm, attached to the children who's still now dead, and toward him. Like most of French great mother for my own part, I don't hesitate to say in spite of the evidence against her, I believe she's innocent. Yeah, yeah, no temptation, they no temptation for such an action. Wait. As to the locket which was being
Which
being
has
present,
That's which has been.
which has been present at the chief edit again. If she had asked me for, I were willing give it to her. I esteem that and value so high. I would have given her almost anything. A murderer provoked about Elizabeth was simply powerful, appealing, but it was not excited. Great. Was excited by her generous injection,
That's interference.
interference, and not in the favor of poor Tristan. The spectre continued to look at justice in this
The spectators.
in the spectation.
Oh, this word?
Yeah,
Indignation.
indignation charged her with the blackest in gratitude. Justin wept as Elizabeth spoke, but she did not speak. My own suffering was extreme during the whole trial. I was convinced that Justin was innocent. When I saw the judge believe her to be guilty, I could not bear to rush out the court in agony. The trial was more upsetting for me. I believe then and it was for Justin, and she who knew she was innocent. But I felt guilty for having created a monster who killed my brother. I passed I passed a night of pure righteousness. In the morning I went to court and asked the verdict. I dare not have asked the bail question, but the officer of the court recognized me and guessed the cause of my visit. The vote had been cast. He told me Justin have not been convicted. I cannot pretend to describe. I felt that the moment word cannot communicate with the heart sickness with despair. I suffer. The man told me that Justin had actually confessed her guilt, that the evidence should be observed, hardly required in the case of as clear as this one. I'm glad of it. Not our church like to convict a criminal upon circumstances evidence, which if it is discussed, this was strange. I wonder what it could possibly mean. Had I deceived me? I was really going crazy. I hurried home and spoke to Elizabeth, my cousin. I said, it is the side you may have expected. Justin had been convicted, but also she have confessed. This was terrible blow to poor Elizabeth. She has been convicted of Justin innocent. Alas, said, how shall I ever believe a human goddess? Just Justin, who I love and value as my sister, how can she put smile of innocence only to betray us? She knows her I am a capable son of God, and yet she committed a murder. Soon after being told that Justin had expressed the desire to see my cousin, my father urged Elizabeth not to go alone. The idea of this visit was torturing me. Yet I felt not I could not refuse. We entered the gloomy prison cell, saw Justin sitting on some straw at the far end. She was handcuffed and her head rested on her knees. She rose on seeing us enter, and when we left her alone, she threw herself at the feet of Elizabeth, weeping bitterly. My cousin wept also. Elizabeth wept bitterly. My cousin wept also. Oh, Justin, she said, why did you rob me of my last consolate? I have faith in you. I have faith in you. Me, of the last consolate, I have faith in you. Innocent. I and although I was very wretched, I was not miserable. I am now. And do you believe that I'm so very wicked? Do you also treat the enemy to push me, to consider me as a murderer? Her voice suffocated with sob. Right, right, my poor girl, said Elizabeth. Why, why do you kneel? If you are innocent, I'm not the one of your enemy. I believe you're guiltless in spite of all the evidence. So I thought I that you hurt yourself to care your clothes to the reporters. You seem to say it was false. To be assured, dear Justin, that nothing can take my confidence you for a moment. But your your own confession, I did confess. My, but my confession was a lie. I confessed I confess so that I might obtain forgiveness, but that was falsehood, lie, heavy at my heart than all of the other sins. May God forgive me. Ever since I was not this the place they assigned me to. He had attacked me. He threatened me over and over until I most began to think I was the monster. He said he threatened me with executions and hellfire in my last moments. If I keep continuing to speak of my innocence at the last, I gave in an evil hour. I opened to lie, and now I'm truly miserable. She weeps, paused, weeping, and continued to act. I thought with horror, my sweet lady, that you might believe your trusted, your possessing aunt and honor who love and creature capital up for a crime. It is a crime that none of the devil himself had committed. Dear William, dear blessed child, I dearest blessed child, I shall see you again soon in heaven, where we shall be happy. And that confronted me, going as I told to suffer a disgrace and death. Oh, Justin, cried Elizabeth, forgive me for having one of the moment to distrust you. Why did you confess? What you do not want to report? Do not fear. I will claim. I will prove you are innocent. I will soften the stone heart of yours enemy and right here and pray you should not die. You, my, my fellow, my companion, my sister, perish on the scaffold. No, I should never survive a horrible misfortune. Justin shook her head sadly. Not afraid of death, he said. God give me the courage to endure the worst. I'm resigned to wait away. Lord, for me, dear lady, to accept patient will of heaven. During this conversation, I have retired to of the corner of the prison room, where I could conceal my suffering. The poor victim who on the next morning have passed of the boundary between life and death. I, I thought not as uh, I did such a deep and bitter pain. I guards my teeth and ground order together and grow that from my inner soul. Justin started when I saw who she was approaching me. Dear sir, you are very kind to visit me. I hope you do not believe that I'm guilty. I could not answer. No, Justin said. Elizabeth, he had more of a convinced of your innocence. Then when I was even she thought he had confessed, he did not believe. I truly thank him. In this last motion, I feel the sincerest gratitude to those who think of me with kindness. How sweet is the affection to other to wreck you. I feel at earth I could die in peace with now with my innocent is acknowledged by you, actually you, and your cousin. I felt that I was the one responsible for the extent and close and despair penetrate into the core of my heart. I bore a heart with me, which nothing but things extinguish. We stayed several hours with Justin, and it was the greatest difficulty that Elizabeth could tear herself away. I was crying. I sent him to die with you. I could not live the world with misery. Justin embraced Elizabeth and said a farewell and have words of emotion and farewell, dear Elizabeth, beloved and only friend. May heaven bless Lord preserve. May this be the last misfortune you ever suffer, live, and be happy, and make others so. Wait, how long is this chapter 8?
We have the last page.
And the next Justin was put to death on the scaffold. Elizabeth's heart was rending. In close veil and moved to the judge for a settled belief. My passionate in appeal were not upon. I planned to tell him everything that I knew. However, I received the cold answer for the harsh feeling of the reason of this man. I realized that my story would do just enough good. They would not listen. They would only take me for a madman. For the torture of my own heart, I turned a confident to of my Elizabeth. This is also was my doing. I caused her sorrow, and my father as well. I saw the member of my family weeping. I saw them pouring this salt on the graves of William and Justin. I tore the remorse, horror, despair. I saw these people who I loved and experienced more suffering than anyone could experience in a lifetime. I hope that they would not be exposed for the losses, but something told me that this would not be the case. Something told me this that this would be the last tear of that the member of my family would shed.
Okay. Right, this, yeah.
So why did anyone kill Justin, and if so, why?
first, Justine didn't really kill anyone.
I think my voice is going to be dead in the last minute.
I don't. Justine didn't actually kill anyone. She was just caught in the crossfire because she had William's locket. So everyone thought, oh, she has William's locket, so she must be the one who murdered him. But in fact, it's the monster, right? It's not her. Okay, so what chapter 8 is that
Now, can you give me the?
yes, wait a bit.
Can you give me the file? Like it's chapter 7.
Okay,
Why
I'll give
don't
you after
we
this. I'll give you
read
after this.
all of chapter 7, 8, and 9?
Yeah. Okay, anyways, so in chapter 8, Victor wishes that he can confess in Justin's place, but his absence when at the time of the murder would make his confession be nonsense. It wouldn't make sense, right? So here you can see his thought process, which is very much moronic. Victor could confess everything, including his secret, but instead he chooses what is silence and isolation. He didn't choose to say about his secret, but he chose to be quiet. This is in the very selfish nature of what is Victor's mindset right here. At the trial, Justine remains that she is innocent, but cannot explain how William's portrait of his mother ended up in her pocket. Not so, she is sentenced to death. Here you can obviously see how obviously deduce that the monster has framed Justin as a part of his revenge on Victor. Victor speaks with a member of the court who says that Justine has already confessed the crime. Victor and Elizabeth then visit Justine in prison, and she explains that she was pressured into confessing by her jailers. She succumbed and confessed a lie. Justine says that she's ready to die and leave behind the sad and bitter world. Justine confesses to a crime that she does not commit and gives up her innocent honesty to save her soul. She has given up her innocence and now no longer sees the world as innocent either. The next day, Justine is executed. Basically, she is murdered for the fact that she has murdered. Victor feels guilt over the fact of his secret role in both William's and Justine's death. Victor, now being able to comprehend what is his grave consequences of his ambition to try and to become what is a godlike creature by making an entire new species. But he so selfishly keeps his secret. He still tries in chapter 8, or also in chapter 8, Victor uses the metaphor of the never dying worm to express his guilt after Justine Moritz' death. His brother William's nanny is falsely accused of William's murder. The true murderer is, in fact, the monster who Victor had created and therefore feels very responsible for. But here, the quote is, but I, the true murderer, felt the never-dying worm alive in my bosom, which allowed for no hope of consolation. This basically means that he knows that he was responsible for the death. He feels guilty for it. But in his selfish nature, he still tries to keep it a secret, and he still wants to maintain an image of himself as something great, as something formidable, and not someone who has bloodied their hands with two people. Now, now you can see that. Now, from this chapter, you could see that Victor is undoubtedly brilliant and ambitious. He has a lot of curiosity with science and secrets of nature. However, his arrogance, belief that he can play God by creating life, shows very dangerous hubris. He disregards natural limits. He disregards the consequences of his work in pursuit of glory. He is also very irresponsible and emotionally weak. After creating the creature, Victor immediately abandons it out of fear and disgust. He refuses to take responsibility for what he has done, which leads to the creature's suffering and eventually its vengeance. This makes Victor very much morally weak. He is more concerned with his own feelings rather than the ethical consequences of his action. You can see that he is from in here, he is very tragic figure. He suffers a lot and loses almost everything, but he's not innocent, is he? The author portrays him as someone who is making choice after choice without thinking of others. He warns Walton against ambition, but only after it's too late. This self-awareness also comes too late from the awareness that he has created life and it has detrimental effects, and it doesn't excuse his earlier irresponsibility. Here you can say that Victor is not a villain in the traditional sense, but he is very much deeply flawed. Shelley uses his character to critique blind ambition, misuse of science, failure to take responsibility. He is now being seen as intelligent, but very reckless, sensitive, but selfish. A man who is destroyed by the very power he tried to control, nature itself. Now, we'll continue on to the 9th chapter, but I will have to really speak. I'll read the first part of the 9th chapter because we'll need to speed it up. We are already behind time right now. Okay? Chapter 9. Nothing is more painful to the human mind than the feelings that have worked up by a quick series of events, the dead calmness of inaction and certainty which follows and deprives the soul of both hope and fear. Justine died. She rested, and I was alive. The blood flowed freely in my veins, but a weight of despair remorselessly pressed on my heart. I had begun life with benevolent intentions. I had longed for the moment when I should put these intentions into practice and make myself useful to my fellow beings. But now all was blasted. I cannot look back upon the past with calmness of conscience and self-satisfaction. Instead, I was gripped by remorse and a sense of guilt. This state of mind preyed upon my health, which has not entirely recovered from the first shock it has sustained. I avoided the face of man. All sounds of joy would torture me. Solitude was my only consolation, deep, dark, death-like solitude. My father observed the change in my disposition and habits. He was pained, and tried to drive away the dark clouds that brooded over me. Do you think, Victor, said he, that I do not suffer also? No one could love a child more than I loved a brother. I did love him very much. However, it is our duty not to make others more miserable by persisting in our grief. It is also a duty we owe to ourselves as well, for excessive sorrow prevents improvement or enjoyment, and even keeps us from completing our daily responsibilities. This advice, although it might help to others, was no help to me. I would have been the first to hide my grief and console my friends if I had been wrestling with sorrow and sorrow alone. but remorse had mingled its bitterness and terror in its alarm with my other sensations. I could only answer my father with a look of despair and try to hide myself from his view. About this time, we retired to our house at Belrive. This change was agreeable to me. Often after the rest of the family had retired for the night, I took the boat and passed many hours on the lake. Sometimes with my sails set, I was driven onward by the wind. Sometimes, after rowing out to the middle of the lake, I left the boat to pursue its own course and gave way to its own miserable reflections. The lake was very quiet and calm. All was at peace around me, but I myself was not at peace. I was the only unquiet thing that wandered restless in a scene so beautiful and heavenly. I was often tempted to dive into the silent lake, that the waters might close over me and my disasters forever. But I was held back when I thought of the heroic and suffering Elizabeth, whom I tenderly loved, and whose existence was connected to mine. I also thought of my father and surviving brother. How could I leave them alone, exposed to the malice of the fiend I had let loose among them? Often I wept bitterly. I wished that peace would revisit my mind, so that I might offer consolation and happiness to those around me, but that could not be. Remorse extinguished every hope. I had been the author of unadulterable evils, and I lived in daily fear that the monster I had created perpetrated some new wickedness. I had an obscure feeling that he was not finished with me and that he would commit some even more horrible crime. How I hate that fiend! When I thought of him, I passionately wished to extinguish that life which I had so thoughtlessly created. I would have made a pilgrimage to the highest peak of the Andes, could I, when there, have thrown him from the heights to his death. I longed to get revenge from the death of our William and Justine. Our house was a house of mourning. My father's health has been shaken by recent events. Elizabeth was sad and depressed. She was no longer happy she was no longer that happy creature who in her youth had wandered with me on the banks of the lake and talked with joy of our future prospects. When I reflect, my dear cousin, said she, on the miserable death of Justine Moritz, I no longer see the world and its works as they before appeared to me. Before, I looked upon the accounts of evil doings and injustice I read or heard from others as tales of ancient days or imaginary evils, but now men seem to me like monsters thirsting for each other's blood. But perhaps I am unjust to say this. After all, everyone believed she was guilty, and if she had in fact committed this crime for she has suffered, she is most certainly would have been depraved of human creatures. I could not agree to death of any human being, but I would have thought such a creature unfit to remain in the society of men. But she was innocent. I know. I feel she was innocent. You are of the same opinion. I know that confirms. Alas, Victor, when falsehood can look so much like the truth, who can be sure of happiness? I feel as if I were walking on the edge of a cliff, towards which thousands are crowding and trying to plunge me into the emptiness. William and Justine were assassinated, and the murderer has escaped. He walks about the world free and perhaps respected. If I were condemned to suffer on the scaffold for the same crimes, I would not change places with such a wretch. These words made my heart ache. I felt that I was the true murderer, not indeed, but in effect, I was the ultimate cause of dear Elizabeth's losses and miseries. Elizabeth saw my pain and took up my hand. My dearest friend, you must calm yourself. These events have affected me, God knows how deeply. But there is an expression of despair, sometimes revenge, in your countenance that makes me tremble. Dear Victor, banish those dark passions. Remember the friends around you. Can we not lift your spirits at least a little? As she spoke, I drew near her as if in terror, as if I feared that the creature was nearby, threatening to rob me of her. Even Elizabeth, whom I had loved so deeply, could not chase away the fiend that hid in my heart. I was encompassed by a cloud which no beneficial influence could penetrate. I was like a wounded deer dragging its fainted limbs to some uncharted blade. Therefore, there to gaze upon the arrow which has pierced it, and to die. Can someone read the rest of the chapter? We have three pages left. Sarah,
Yeah.
can you read the part where here? Start with sometimes.
Okay, so sometimes I could deal with the sullen despair that overwhelmed me. But there was other times when it was too much to endure. I would then seek out some new place and try to distract myself by going on a long journey in the elfin valleys. On one occasion, I visited the valley of
Chamonix.
I had explored it frequently during my boyhood. 6 years has passed since then. I was a wreck, but the valley itself was unchanged. I made the first part of my journey on horseback. The weather was fine. It was the middle of August, nearly 2 months after the death of Justin. The weight upon my spirit was sensibly lightened as I made my way into the ravine of Arve. There were immense mountains and precipices hanging over me on every side. I could hear the river raging among the rocks and the dashing of the waterfall. These sounds lifted my spirit. I ceased to be afraid of any beingless almighty than that which created and ruled the element. As I climbed, the valley shone below me. Ruined castles hung on the peaks of piney mountains. The river Arve hurried onward. Simple cottages peeped forth from among the trees. All these images combined to make a scene of great beauty. And all above it all were the sublime peak of mighty Alps. Those white and shining pyramids towered above everything, as if they belonged to another earth. Soon I saw a high and snowy mountain. Immense glaciers were invisible from the road. I heard the rumbling thunder of a falling avalanche and saw a smoke it left behind. Mount Blas, the supreme and magnificent mountain, rose up in the distance. A tingling, long-lost sense of pleasure often came across me during this journey. A turn in the road will remind me of the day gone by. I was carried back to the light-hearted Galilee of boyhood. The very wind seemed to whisper to me in soothing accents. Mother Nature seemed to be urging me to weep no more. Unfortunately, these feelings were only temporary. After a few moments of happiness, I was sink back to grief and misery. At length I arrived at the village of Chamois and paid for the room. I was exhausted. For a few minutes I stood at the window, watching the pale trace of lightning play above Mont Blanc. Then I placed my head upon my pillow, and sleep crept over me. I felt it. I felt it as it came and welcomed it.
Okay. Thank you for that. Now, chapter 9. Here, Victor despairs that his good intentions have resulted in such horror. Soon, the Frankensteins go to their vacation home in Belle to escape the bad memories of what happens. Yet Victor still has thoughts of suicide and begins to desire revenge against the monster. Victor's response to the monster's betrayal mirrors which is the monster's response to Victor's betrayal Both isolate themselves in nature and seek revenge. On the day that Elizabeth tells that she no longer sees the world the same way after witnessing the execution of an innocent. You can see that there is another theme of lost innocence. Elizabeth, for so long a perfect model of innocence, began to lose what is her perception and how she sees the world, begins to lose her innocence as a whole. A while later, Victor decides to travel to Chamonix, France, hoping the trip will provide relief from his ephemeral because human sorrows. Along the way, he gazes at waterfalls, the towering Mont Blanc. At times, the sight reminded him of happier times, but never for long. This is sentiment of typical romantic literature. Human concerns are short-lived, whereas nature is compared to God, enduring, very ethereal, and, well, timeless. You can see that on wait you can see that Victor's father tells Victor to come with kindness and affection to those who love you, and not with hatred for your enemies. This foreshadows the emotional conflict that Victor will face as his hatred for the creature intensifies. It also hints at the tragedy that will result with Victor's inability to let go of revenge and anger. The warning suggests that clinging to hatred rather than embracing love would lead to further suffering, which foreshadows more deaths and Victor's descent into which is abysmal despair. Anyone have any questions? No? Okay, so our assignment for today is to explain Shelley's choice in showing the consequences of monsters' actions rather than the motivation so far. And
So will you write it on a Padlet?
Yep, and I will send the
Chapter 6, 7, 8.
yeah, in the Zalo chat, and I'll also I'll send the homework there. Okay? With that being said,
What? So the homework is going to be that or a different type?
the homework is going to be on Zalo. Okay, with that being said, this is the end of the class. Goodbye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Give me the file, quick. Give me the file.
You're in Zalo. I'll give you the
Ah!
And can you see the homework on what do you mean on a Padlet?
Yeah, I'll send it on Padlet as well.